One of the other things too that kind of scares me is that you had just mentioned is about the jobs and feeling good about yourself. I don't think the economy is going to turn around until they start creating jobs, because the thing of it is that we can't. American people can't go out and buy anything or do anything that's going to make this situation better. It's probably going to end up hurting the banks in one way or another until he starts creating jobs. And we just went 6-8 months talking about health care. So that kind of scares me. And I also want to know what do you think about the health care bill?
Yeah, well, first, David, let me just address. There's a phrase that all of us should try to take out of our vocabularies, and that is creating jobs. This is a right-wing meme. There is no such thing as creating jobs. Nobody creates jobs. Mm-hmm. People hire other people to do things so that the work that is done will cost them less than the product that is produced.
Right.
In other words, if I'm going to hire somebody for $40,000 a year, I'm going to do it because I know that person's going to make me $60,000 a year. Right. If they're only going to make me $30,000 a year, I'm not going to hire them. Mm-hmm. So nobody creates a job. What people do is they hire labor. They hire people to do things to make a profit. Mm-hmm. And so the only reason why somebody's going to hire somebody is to make something because they know somebody's going to buy it. And so again, we're a demand-driven economy. There's supply and there's demand. Supply is productivity, the ability to make things. Demand is the ability to buy things. And you're absolutely right. Until people have jobs and have money in their pockets, they can't buy things. They can't create demand. Now, over the last, what we've seen is we've really been in a state of economic collapse for about 15 years. But what's been going on is, and particularly for the last 10 years, but what's been going on is that the middle-class Americans, because they had equity in their homes and because they had lines of credit on their credit cards, as their real wages were declining and cost of livings were going up, they were able to hang on to their lifestyle by taking money out of their house and putting money on their credit cards. Mm-hmm. And really, what blew up at the end of 2008 and during the end of the Bush administration was that people ran out of equity in their homes. They couldn't borrow on their homes anymore, in part because everybody realized that there was a housing bubble and the prices were inflated, and they had already maxed out their credit cards. And so now you've got, not only do we need to put money in people's pockets by giving them jobs, but we've got to have enough time pass for them to start paying down their debt to the point where they'll start spending again. And that's going to be a couple of years. It's going to take a couple of years. And that's a scary thing because it means that this economic disaster is going to be blamed on the Democrats and on Obama rather than on the Republicans who caused it.
Right. I agree with that completely. And as far as the health care bill, what do you think? It upsets me because there's been so much, that's been the focus. And unless people are working, especially the way some of the things that I'm hearing about this health care bill, they're still not going to be able to afford health care, and it seems to me as if they're going to be fined for not purchasing it. So, and maybe I don't have enough information on it, but what are your thoughts on the bill?
Well, my understanding, and the bill is, of course, is still fluid, but my understanding is that people who make below a certain amount, and I think it's 150% of poverty, which would be around $25,000, $30,000 a year. People who make below a certain amount, their health insurance will be, if their employer doesn't provide it, the government will pay for it.
Okay.
And people who make over that amount, they're going to have to buy health insurance, or their employer will, buy it. So, I don't think that this is going to be. I don't think it's a terrible thing that's happening. It's other than the fact that it is cementing into place the primacy, the power of a handful, literally, about a dozen large insurance companies mm-hmm. who don't see a single patient, don't give a single vaccine. They don't heal people. They're simply bankers. They're banksters.
Right.
They're middle, and between us and our doctors, and they're skimming the money off the top, and they shouldn't be there. No other industrialized country in the world allows a for-profit health insurance industry to exist in its country. It's a crime in every other country in the world. Only in the United States do we allow primary health care to be provided on a for-profit basis. And what we're doing here with this health care bill is we're not only allowing it, we're adding, we're saying the government's going to pay for another 20 or 30 million people to get insurance from you guys. We're going to give you even more money. So, the bad news is we're giving the banksters who run the health insurance companies, a pile of cash. Good news is that everybody's going to have health insurance, which means hopefully that more and more Americans are going to start paying attention to what's going on with their insurance, which might lead to pressure for real reform like single payer, like, or a French kind of system, or for more nonprofits or a public option or something that could actually bring about some true change. But the Senate bill is not health care reform. The Senate bill is health care tweaking.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, too, that I was talking to someone about is that it was mentioned that, like with Medicare, they were able to take a rough draft of that and make it into something that was halfway decent. Now, I personally don't think that's going to be possible now, just due to the fact that there's so many blogs, media, Fox News, that every single time they try to tweak whatever they're working on now, it's going to become, there's going to be another Tea Party thrown, So that I don't know if that's going to be possible. I'm a little irritated by that too. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Going on a rant there. With everything that's going on, because someone else also mentioned that if Obama gets health care reform passed, then that's the thing. That's his legacy. So even if he does nothing else, that will be his legacy, and it'll be like the greatest thing ever. What do you think that there's a possibility that he's going to be reelected? I mean, I'm sure that I hope that he is, but do you think he'll be reelected?
President Obama?
Yes.
I sure hope so. The fate and future of the Supreme Court is going to depend a lot on whether or not he's reelected. I'm certainly going to do everything I can to get him reelected, even though I disagree with many of his policies. The Supreme Court has the potential and the history of doing so much damage in this country. Right. We can't afford a more conservative Supreme Court than we have right now. We can't even afford the one we have right now. So we'll see. I think that 2010 might be a tough year because the economy is not going to turn around over the short term. I mean, there might be a slight bounce as a result of them pumping the stimulus out. 2011 is probably going to be in the crapper, and maybe by 2012 it'll start to come back and like with Reagan. I mean, the difference. See, I think the bet that they're making, that the Obama people are making, is that they're going to play out the same cycle that Reagan did, which is he came into office with hyperinflation. Paul Volcker jacked the interest rates way, way up to cut down on inflation, which cooled off the economy to the point that in '82 there was a recession going on, and a very bad one. Reagan was blamed for that. The Republicans were blamed for that. '82 was a good year for the Democrats. By '83, Volcker had inflation under control, so he dropped interest rates. When he dropped interest rates, that made it cheaper to buy a house, cheaper to buy a car. All that pent-up demand from 2 years of people not buying anything, people ran out into the marketplace and started buying things. And so '83 and '84 in particular became a boom year, and that got Reagan reelected. And I think that the Obama folks believe that exact same cycle is going to be played out right now. I don't think so, because in the 1980s, the average American had more than 80% equity in their home. Now the average American only has a little more than 40% equity in their home. Mm-hmm. In the 1980s, the average American had less than $1,000 in credit card debt. Now it's more than $7,000 in credit card debt. In the 1980s, more than a quarter of all Americans were unionized, which meant more than half of all Americans had the equivalent of a good union job. They had a pension, they had vacation time, they had full health benefits, and they had a paycheck that, with one person employed, they could raise an entire family. It was half of America. Today, it's 7% of America, because of a 30-year war on organized labor. So I don't think that we have the the economic, the physical infrastructure. I mean, in the 1980s, you had factories all across America. All those factories are empty now. Take the train from Washington, D.C. to New York and just look out the window, at all the old factories that are all shuttered up along that Amtrak route that used to be a rail line where they would move goods. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're all empty. All that stuff is being made in China now. And so I don't think that we've got the financial, the middle class infrastructure, or the business infrastructure, frankly, to have the kind of 1984 boom in 2012, and that worries me.